We seek the authentic over the authoritarian. We see behind the curtain the theatrics, the theoi tricks, the tricks of the gods, becoming aware of the artifice used by those who would rule us. As our eyes become opened, we cultivate the knowing, that inner gateway to all that is, the infinite mindscape where the patterns that create manifest reality exists. The gatekeepers held sway for so long, defining reality for those who listen. But now the rush of the crowd comes as each knows the way is open to all who thirst for knowledge and wisdom. The gatekeeper who stands in the way will be trampled, for nothing can stop those whose time has come. The portals of knowing are opening. Beware to the gatekeepers who will not give way. This is the Portals of Knowing podcast, brought to you by portalsofknowing.com. We are Karron Christine Patrick and Brett Collins Shepard, independent researchers in the area of the experiencer movement, exopolitics, UFOs, anomalies, and alternative history. Welcome. Hello, welcome to the podcast. This is Karron Christine Patrick. Today, I'm continuing to talk about the Mars Anomaly Research Society Conference in my town, Silver City, New Mexico, on September 7th through the 9th. Really looking forward to it. We've been making all kinds of plans, bringing in all kinds of cool speakers. The prior program was about Brett Collins Shepard, and he's kind of set the theme for the talk, Listening to Mars. He has an amazing case concerning the use of the Nikola Tesla, a man ahead of his time, the Nikola Tesla radio telescope, and what several scientists pointing it at Mars when Mars was closest to the Earth. What did they find out? What did they hear? So that'll be great. Carla Friedrich will be talking about Emanuel Swedenborg. He has an interesting book called Earths in the Universe, so she'll be sharing about that. I am speaking at this said conference. I'm very excited. This year, or actually ever since Christmas, I've had a bizarre situation connected to Mars that I've been sorting out, and I'll be talking about that as well as my background in clandestine programs. I was being recruited as a young child in the California school district for Project Talent, which front-wise on the overt side was tracking kids towards college, and covertly was recruiting psychic and talented children in order to catch up with the Russians who, in the purview of the Cold War, already had a advanced parapsychology studies, and already were recruiting their own school-age children for these programs, and the United States felt it had to catch up. So that's kind of the gist of what I will be talking about at the conference. I will also have with me Cheyenne Shepard. Cheyenne is Brett Collins' daughter. She came to us from California. When she turned 18, she was in the foster care system there, and also had experiences with the ongoing program that's still going, which is tracking psychic and gifted children. So this is a thing. Recently, Brett and I went to the Contact in the Desert event, and it was my chance to hear a whole bunch of speakers of people that I'd known, and I kind of blew it, but I'm not sorry, and I'll tell you why. Is because I ended up having conversation after conversation just over and over again with other, what Brett and I call program children. So we're kids that are targeted, tested, brought into programs, had memory erasure in some cases, most cases actually. And then we're discarded, left to fend on our own with these weird experiences under our belt and trying to sort it out. And Brett is talked about his many experiences, but particularly when he was 15, when he was shown images of the moon and Mars, some of which had not actually officially happened yet. So it was a time anomaly aspect. And knowing that he had a photographic memory, they showed him those photos, and that kind of stuck with him his whole life. So it caused him to continue to pursue the Earth. Well, yeah, he did Mars anomalies, and especially lunar anomalies. So that was kids like that. I got a chance to talk to Penny Bradley at length because we were in the identical same program. And she was just about 5 or 6 years older than me. So she went into the secret space program and somehow jogged a fairly high level recall. And she began to talk about it and now there's this underground community of kids that were in programs. I just say kids because it seems like they recruited us quite early. I think there were reasons for that, having to do with belief systems. I think as you get older, your belief systems sort of get encrusted, and you're not able to process new experiences as well. And I think that they figured that out, that they needed to get to kids young. They needed to put them through trauma-based mind control for the purposes of getting them to do disassociation and to put compartments in the memory. This has all been talked about in the purview of MK Ultra and other, the Monarch program and things like that. So this is my experience as well. And I'm going to go into that in depth in this conference, as well as add Cheyenne's testimony as well, because they continued it. And, officially they discontinued Project MK Ultra, but unofficially, of course, they've continued it and expanded it. And it's become part of clandestine or covert programs. And one of the things I really try to emphasize to people, because I get flack, we get flack, prove it, or, you're paranoid, or, when you talk to dozens and dozens of these people, which has been my privilege in the last few years, it becomes a whole different, one of the things Brett says, they're doing it just because we think they're doing it. It's not a paranoia thing. It's an experiential thing. And together we just, trigger each other to remember what these programs were about. And so, whether you believe it or not, I hope you would there's so much more going on in this conference that you might find interesting, but you might find this part of it interesting because the gist of the Mars Anomaly Research Society is, it seems like, if you study lunar anomalies, Mars anomalies, clandestine programs of all sorts, you get to roughly to the same destination. And that's the idea that we have a secret space program. And very interestingly, just a couple of days ago from this recording, we had President Trump announcing that we're going to have a Space Force. It's a different branch other than the Air Force or NASA. So that was interesting. Those of us who kind of know this is real, we're like, oh, okay, yeah, why don't you tell us when you already got, So that is kind of more the focus of this particular Mars Anomaly Conference. There's been 6 of them. This is the 7th annual. And the whole gist of it is experiencers, not just researchers. This is people who've had experiences related to this topic. Some of whom were jump room participants in the programs are going to be there. So the jump room program became the primary way, it seems, that the secret space program colonized Mars. This is not like something I'm pulling out of my hat. We're talking about dozens and dozens of witnesses coming forward about this, whether they were on ships orbiting Mars and landing, or whether they were in the jump room programs. In kind of under the radar, there's really quite a few people talking about this. Now, overt, covert, most important thing I could get across today is overt, covert. You got to know this is a factor, because what we get is, well, that's not possible. It's not science. Ha 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 ha. Well, guess what? There's overt science. I kind of call it PBS science. So it's a consensus reality show science that you get in your textbooks in your university, and it's quite controlled. Just try to talk about anything outside the narrative and you'll be vilified as pseudoscientific. Okay, whatever. I hate to tell those people really invested in overt science, but there is a covert science. And that I can prove. I can actually prove that. I could physically prove that. And the reason why is I live in New Mexico, and a couple of years, last year. Yeah, it was last year. It's hard to believe. Last year, myself and Cheyenne went to Roswell. It was a lot of fun. We went to the festival there. And on the way there, we were fairly near the Trinity site where they exploded the first atomic bomb covertly before they exploded it overtly on two cities in Japan, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And I went into this rock shop, and they had Trinitite there. This Trinitite was a rock, basically, man-made, that was created by the heat of the nuclear explosion that was all developed in Alamogordo, New Mexico, in the latter part of World War II. And the hits the sand, melts it, makes this kind of greenish, gray, Coke bottle green sort of glass out of the sand. Because, of course, you heat up sand at silicon, you get glass. That's like how we've gotten glass for centuries. This happened in an instant. And some of it got collected, and they sell it at the rock shop. They got a few pieces left, and I grabbed one because I was just like amazed. So I have this physical piece of history that proves that there's overt and covert science, technology, government, governance, military, etc., because until they exploded the two bombs in Japan, I like to say, until they exploded the two big-ass bombs in Japan, unfortunately, very tragic and, ostensibly ended the war because we scared ourselves to death, just humanity. Basically, it was covert. In fact, it was still theoretical. If you would have talked to any physicist at the time, that they were literally minutes from exploding the bomb and over the, two cities, and even after they exploded the big-ass bomb in New Mexico, which surprisingly, it was so remote, nobody, if anybody saw anything, they probably didn't even know what they were looking at. So it would have still been considered not scientifically possible. They would have just argued you red in the face, saying that this is not possible, it's only theoretical, until boom, and boom, it was done. So that's a situation where you have something becoming, going from covert to overt, because it's just too big to hide. You can't hide two big ass bombs. So here's the deal. What if you're dealing with a phenomenon that is not so overt? Like, let's say, teleportation, which is really kind of the story here in this Mars anomaly. Part of the Mars anomaly studies is that there's a teleportation process that goes to Mars. Well, unless it was, announced by the government and here you go, we're going to make it, you can go instantly from New York to LA, unless they implement it or tell us they've already got it or, invite the public to participate, then it would remain covert. So whether, a scientist could tell you it's not possible, but if it's happening, they're just uninformed. And they have not bothered to inform themselves of the possibility. We do have one of the major scientists, Michio Kaku, who's saying that it's theoretically possible, and apparently they've done a few, protons or electrons through some kind of wormhole. But anyway, so there is some quantum hologram type theory type speculation on the part of overt science. But, overt science's job is to hide things at this point. And this is what eyewitness testimony comes in, that if you got one person saying it, okay, but if you got 20, 30, 50, 100 people saying the same thing, maybe we should listen to what they're saying and see how their stories correlate. At least hear it out. So what I want to say quickly while I still have time here is that there's other aspects of this overt covert thing, and I'm going to be coming out with it because I can't deny it. I'm struggling with it, and I can't deny what it is I'm going to talk about. I already knew I was brought in kindergarten level, tested for all kinds of abilities, was told I had a high IQ. My parents were told one factor of me, I was like almost nearly blind. I was like legally blind in that era between 3 and like 10, maybe even 12. What they said is I could get hit by a Mack truck and not even see it from severe astigmatism. So I had giant Coke bottle glasses, and I went to the first grade. And the first grade is where I got tested in the Central California area, Concord, California area. I was just recently on Google Maps looking at my old school where all of this happened. It's now a parochial school. And basically, tested, brought into the vice principal's office, which was, usually you were in trouble, so I was scared to death. And I was given a full psychological profile. I was hypnotized, and I also was given Zener card testing, which, go look it up, Zener. I strongly suggest you look it up if you have any curiosity at all. It was a test developed to test for ESP abilities, where you try to guess the next card if it's and it's non-verbal or word-oriented. It's picture-oriented. And I must have scored pretty good because they got real interested in me. What I know now is they were looking for gifted children for remote viewing programs. And, I couldn't hardly see past my nose. So how was I going to do remote viewing? Instead, I had what I later came to find out is nocive abilities, which is the ability to know in various ways. Not all of it is visual. Some of it is auditory, so clairaudient, just knowing, just picking up a fact. So my whole life up to the point I was being tested was I just knew stuff. Like if the adults around me were having a conversation, I knew additional information about the story, and kind of realized just about that time when I was 7 or 8 that I was freaking out the grown-ups with what I just knew, and I learned to shut up and not really say anything about that anymore. So really young, I realized there's something different about me, So I started just knowing a bunch of things that I could not, they were memories. They were repetitious dreams or facts that popped into my head or diagrams it was, pictures of people that I later came to know, which is interesting. And later, one of the things that popped into my head one of those times that I just knew something was the term, the Psychic Sentinel program, Psychic Sentinels. So I didn't quite understand what that was all about, but it began, as soon as it's for me, when this kind of thing pops into my head, it's like a file name on a computer file. So if I think about it, I start reading the file. A bunch of different concepts come out. And what I, found out is that there's a program to guard, sensitive areas. Obviously, if remote viewing is real, then obviously somebody has to be the guard. Somebody has to prevent a good remote viewer from coming in and seeing what needs to be seen. It would seem like if you were developing a remote viewing program, which the United States, it's completely declassified and tons of information on that, then about 2 seconds after you realize you could remote view your enemy's territory or something like that, then naturally you would have to find a way to prevent remote viewers from doing the same to you. So that was one aspect. Now later, where I'm going to get into this story deeply is not so much all those basics, because there's another story for me, and it's a little hard to unfold in a short amount of time. That's why I'll need all the time at the conference to explain it, and I'll have a good slideshow to show that. That'll be my talk. is that this Christmas, I'm just going to lay it out there. This Christmas, I got an interesting Christmas present. We are friends with Mars Anomaly Research Society founder, one of the founders, Andrew Brishago, well known in Anomaly and paranormal circles as having been a teleportation participant as a child, as the United States developed teleportation capacity. Also known later on as having been part of the jump room program to Mars. And I know Andy and I have been trying to place each other for a long time. We know each other. We're the same age. We were involved in the California School District together, which seems to be the Central California area seems to be sort of where all of the technology to do this originates. There's a lot there. And he said, "Oh, wait, I remember where I met you." And for me, as soon as I saw his picture, there's a picture out on the internet of him when he was in the teleportation program, and he was 6 or 7, and he looked just incredibly familiar. It's always this. I'm not the only person who says that. He looks really, really familiar, which is usually an indication that there's a connection, that there's a memory. So I already had that, and he said, "You were working at Cal State." And I'm like, "Well, it wasn't me. You were working at Cal State, but you seem like you were quite a bit older, like maybe even 15 years older." And I go, "Well, it's not me because we're the same age now." And he said, "Your name that you told me was Dr. Karron ROS. Dr. Karron ROS, which is interesting." So, he basically said that he met this woman in the ground crew of the jump room program, and she was interviewing all the jump room participants for, asking them a series of questions and recording it for a database, which ostensibly would be used by psychics. But here, it's just weird questions like, would you prefer chocolate or licorice, or what's your favorite color, or, just interesting questions like that. And, I immediately understood what he was talking about. What he was talking about was a psychic person creating a file of the energetics of that person. So, the kind of psychic I am, I could pick up an energy signature of a person. If I study their file and I see their name and I, hear their voice and maybe a recording of their voice and read about them, where they came from and their likes and dislikes, eventually I get a feeling like I actually know them and could pinpoint them in a remote viewing situation. So what I think was going on was she was interviewing him for the Psychic Sentinel, another part of the Psychic Sentinel program, which was to track these people using this weird exotic technology of teleportation and time travel. You got to find them if something goes wrong, if they get sent to the wrong place. You need to find them in time and space. And we're talking not just time, past or present, but maybe another timeline, location, etc. You got to be able to remote view them, and the more you know about them, the easier that would be. So as he unfolded this story, which I don't believe was actually exactly me, I think it was a multiple of me somehow. That's a whole story of possible cloning or time cloning or timeline cloning. I don't know. I'm going to pin that down what I actually think it is by then and really talk about it in depth. But one thing I realized when I was finding out more about Dr. ROS is I could do her job now. I have unfolded my abilities. I have looked into all these different programs. I have a background in computer science. I could do her job. I mean, that was the realization. Number one, I could step right in and do this job. I feel fairly certain. Number two, it explained a heck of a lot of dreams and memories and information I've been downloading for a long time. So if you think of it this way, think of really, really close twins, because this is what this is based on, the twin study of Joseph Mengele's, where we begin to study what's it like for how do multiples have a psychic connection. If you imagine that I have a psychic connection to this woman, Dr. ROS, then I'm, connected to her life energy, thoughts, and experiences, and she is to mine. So that's a very interesting situation. Now, to add to the intrigue of this, my partner, Brett Shepard, and Cheyenne saw her. She was talking to me in a laundromat in another town we lived in New Mexico. And this sounds kind of silly, but it makes sense because, first of all, if you were going to meet up, if someone was sent to meet up with me when I was living at that town at that time, we just simply didn't go out to too many public places. But the laundromat, we were there, we were stuck for, however many hours it took to do the laundry. It was a very boring place, so I would have loved any kind of scintillating conversation whatsoever. And that had happened. And Brett realized it was another me, or me from the future, because she is 15 years older. We had an entire conversation at this boring laundromat that I don't recall. Because 3 days after this incident, I got a mind wipe situation, or what my friend John Polk sometimes calls alien anesthesia, or is called in the program kids vernacular blank slate technology. I vaguely remember 2 glimpses of my experiences with talking to this woman, but I had an entire hour-long plus conversation with her that I don't recall. However, Brett recalls it quite well, and so does his daughter Cheyenne, because she was there with us. So I've got 3 people I really admire, trust, believe in. We're all trying to unfold the same types of information. Andrew Bishago, Brett Shepard, and Cheyenne Shepard, all telling me that I met this woman, or that this woman exists, I guess would be the way to put it. Now, to add to that, I've had, 10 people who've seen me and met me tell me exactly the same thing. They said, I know you, I met you, you were wearing a lab coat, you were using a computer, and it's you, my sort of normal everyday dress. This is my big Clark Kent glasses, red lipstick, and a hair bun. I mean, that's me forever, when I'm working. And this is exactly how this other person, this Dr. Rose, apparently appeared to people, except she had a lab coat. So there's some places she's working where she is a lab coat, she's a technician, needs a lab coat. Andrew recalls she was wearing a lab coat. I don't even own one. So this is now answering some intrigue of why people seem to recognize me wearing a lab coat, using a computer, and they've seen me. And every single one of those people were program kids. So I'm going to put all this together in this talk to try to just get the information out. Because the main thing here is I don't know what conclusion to draw, really, honestly. I don't know what I've got to prove here. It's a story. It's an experience. I'm having an experience other people are having with me and with this other person that relates to these programs that I've known about for a long time. And so I'm just going to lay the story out with the supporting experiences and testimony and let people decide what they think. What I mostly am interested in doing is, if you are a program person, we are helping each other remember. And so if, how it works is, if you have an extraordinary experience of some kind, and you don't talk about it with someone else in a meaningful way, your mind begins to act like it didn't happen, especially if it's traumatic. And that's the core issue of PTSD is the inability to express extreme experience and find meaning in it. Because ultimately, we assign meaning to the experiences of our life, particularly as we get older. And I'm in that, I guess, that third stage of life, that last third of life, you're heading for the transition to whatever is beyond death. We don't know. And you begin to sum up your experiences and try to make sense of it and try to find meaning. And if you have these odd, strange experiences, that's very difficult, particularly if you can't talk about it. So I'm a great proponent of, let's talk about it. And the problem we have with paranormal is there is the overt side of the box. It wants to sigh up you and make you prove it because they're not comfortable with it for different reasons. I really can't do anything with that. If somebody's in the prove it, whatever, that's not the point. That's not where I am at with my own story. That's not where other people are at with their own story. We need to talk about it. And we need to remove the stigma and the threat of financial assassination of being that weirdo, or the family ostracizations of telling your story. This is happening to people, and whether anyone wants to accept it or not, they have just as much right to express it and try to process it as any other human experience. It took a long time for us to allow veterans to do that. It took a long time for us to societally accept what they used to call battered women. Now we talk about domestic violence. It used to take a long time for us to accept that people have alternative sexual orientation and experiences. And this experience or situation of people having abductions, contactee experiences, clandestine science and technology and government experiences, we're the last taboo, I think. And we're not going away. Sorry if you are uncomfortable with what I'm saying. I can't help you on that. It's not my job to prove it to you. It's my job to have my experience, express it, and my literal goal is not for, trying to prove anything to society, but it is to connect with other people who've not had a chance to express what's happened to them. And because I've been doing this more and more and more since 2012, taken a lot of flack from family and ex-friends and their family that just wants to be relatives instead of, family. And I've taken flack from researchers and people who, seem to think it's their job to, protect something. I don't know what, whatever. Some ufology thing or some, scientific thing or whatever. That's not what my goal is. My goal is to understand and express my own experience and have the privilege of hearing other people's experiences. That's really, really important to me. And that's something I'm prioritizing on more and more as I go to conferences. I feel really honored when I just express who I am and my experiences, and somebody says, they tell me their story and their experience, and they say, you're the first person I ever said that to because you didn't give me that look, right? And I feel real honored by that. I feel like that's what, this is part of the human story. This is part of the human experience and deserves a hearing. So that's, why I'm sticking this out here. It'll be interesting for me to unfold it. I'm working on the presentation right now and there's so much, there's so much to an experience like that because it encompasses so many aspects of my life and other people's lives. But I'm going to pin that down and lay it out for you. I'm going to bring Cheyenne on to tell her experiences that go along with it. Mars Anomaly Research Society Conference is going to be amazing, the speakers that we have. I hope you check out marsanomalyconference.com, marsanomalyconference.com online to see what all we're developing. September 7th through 9th, we will be in the historic Murray Hotel in Silver City, New Mexico, that's being renovated right now. So they're kind of using our conference as, the due date to get it all done. It was built in the 1930s, 1934, I think. And it's Art Deco style, Adobe style on the, ground level. The rooms are real charming. It's just a charming place. And I love participating in an event where our venue is a historical, treasure, pretty prominently sticking right up, probably the tallest building in town, I'm not sure, right in the middle of downtown Silver City, which is a vacation destination for people from El Paso, from Las Cruces, from Albuquerque, Tucson, Phoenix. It's a weekend getaway kind of place. We get lots of visitors because the city kept its downtown and it built with brick instead of wood, which was, most of your ghost towns were built with wood, so they didn't really hold up over time. The city decided to build with brick and stone, and so we still have it. And it's got, if you tootle around here, it's got houses from just about every era since the 1800s. So I just love it. Brett and I and Cheyenne have been here since December. of 2017 and been part of the arts community and participated in events already. And that was the big attraction. And it was Carla Friedrich's fault, right? She kept saying, "You guys will love Silver City. You'll love Silver City." And we certainly do. And we love the open-minded people here who are going to give us a hearing and let us have our event. We've got support from the mayor's office and from, the downtown associations. They love having events here because this is, the lifeblood of this area. We're in a frontier town. We're pretty isolated from other towns. So you'll be able to get here. There's a number of places to stay, not just the Murray. We do have a block of hotel rooms available. You can get here by driving Highway 10 and coming up, I think it's 180, and then north of Deming. Or what I've done is I've gone to both Phoenix and to Albuquerque by air. There's a Boutique Air. That's owned by a lady. You get in a little 8-passenger plane and you get a quick flight from those two places to get here. What you want to do is go to MarsAnomalyConference.com, contact Carla. She's the contact person. That information is on there. And right now, it's middle of June. We've got an early bird special, 3 days, 15 speakers for $50. That's a good deal. Just having been at Contact in the Desert was much higher. Most conferences higher, but we're giving an introductory price. It's going to be intimate, so you'll be able to really chit-chat with the speakers and hang out with them. And there's little coffee shops and cafes just a block or so away. There's art galleries all over the place. I mean, it's charming, and it'll be fun, and it'll be like family, like a family reunion. So I hope you decide to come and listen to myself and the other speakers. Thank you for listening, and may your days be peaceful. Thank you for listening to the Portals of Knowing podcast. Please check out the website portalsofknowing.com for books and media from unique perspectives. Also on portalsofknowing.com, uniquely curated resources have been chosen by the team of Shepard and Patrick. Cultivate the inner knowing for yourself using the great resources on our website. Thank you to the artist Jazzar for the song Great Dark Spot from the album Galaxy that can be found on the freemusicarchive.org. This is a production of portalsofknowing.com.